let's dive in. Okay, so just wanted to put this, this was in the email when we first kicked everything off and we had those dates, but just kind of wanted to show. We've had our overview, which I think in the future I'm going to record this and that way folks can just watch recordings. But you and I went through our overview, kind of had some extra time for Q&A to support where you were at. We went over, we had that working session to kind of build out your primary career value message, and then those prove it messages that support your overall value message. This way you can prepare, practice these. And when I say practice them, like these should be stories you're comfortable talking about, because in an interview, nobody knows you better than you, right? So these are the stories to practice, refresh your memory. And I'm even going to send you just a heads up. When you're telling these stories, you want to do it in it's called a CAR format, where you just really talk through the challenge, the actions you took, and then the results. Mm-hmm. So I was going to send that to you after we kind of pinpointed those couple stories from your past that were the strongest. So just a heads up, when I'm done reviewing, I will send you kind of very simple challenge, action, result, and I'll include a couple of my own examples just to make it very simple for you. And then practice them. Put them into your interview inventory, which is that spreadsheet that I mentioned with, just start adding these two. That way you can very easily reference them in the future. And then that way, even let's say 2 years from now, you're in the job market again, you already have these stories to refresh your memory. You can leverage this forever. And then now today we're going to talk about establishing fit and likability. So having your stories ready for an interview today is half the battle. Yes, they want to know you're qualified, but if you have the interview, then technically you're already qualified, because they wouldn't take the time to meet with you unless you're already qualified, right? So that's one rule of thumb, is if you got the interview, they view you as qualified. At that point, it's a matter of going to the interview and focusing on building fit, establishing that fit with your stories, and then establishing that fit, building rapport, and then the likability factor. This fit and likability, that rapport that you're going to build, is going to be the other 50% of that coin to make it to the next round. Up until this point, it's just been your marketing materials and getting noticed. At this point, you're coming prepared with your stories because you know your value, but you're coming with the stories that are in terms that will matter to them, so they can see you as, they can easily see how you fit in that role. And then again, it's just building that likability and being memorable. And then our next session will be going through I saved your email last week when I sent you the email about questions that you struggled with an interview last week, so I do have that email saved, and next week will be our final session, and we will talk through common interview questions. And because we had already spent some time starting with common interview questions, we'll focus on, so if you're interviewed today, if there's any that you feel are ones that you want that you struggled with, let me know. But I suspect we'll go through common interview questions, the tell me about yourself question. I think there's another one that I wanted to include as a very common one. Just want to make sure that you're prepared for it. And then we'll have time to go through any mock interview if there's any questions you want to practice, or talking through any of your value statements. Okay?
Very good.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to get this full screen so you don't have to see everything around it. So talking through your fit and likability. And again, this is the other half of the coin. Your career stories are one half to show what you can bring to that role, and to show those differentiators, how you stand out among the rest. And then the other half is you can be qualified, but the other half is that likability and establishing your culture fit, because that's how, there's a lot of people that are hired. Companies are spending a lot of time with culture fit, because you can hire a manager that does not fit the culture, and a bad manager can destroy a good team. Someone with strong skills and hits all their credentials, but comes in and is a standalone person, doesn't want to work in a team, can hurt team morale. So companies, especially big organizations, recognize how important culture fit is today. And of course, likability is how you will stand out and be memorable when they're looking at, we interviewed 10 people. Now we need to dwindle that down to the top 3 or 4 that are going to go into the next round. So likability is how you stand out.
Mhm.
All right. So for here, we're going to cover general 3 parts of an interview, just a quick recap, and then how establishing fit, establishing likability fit into that. And mirroring and asking good questions is actually kind of under the likability piece, but we're going to talk through each of these areas.
Mhm.
Okay, so when we talk about 3 parts of an interview, and you are already going through this right now, but we both know when you go to any interview, no matter what stage it's at, whether it's an initial phone call, screening, whether you're now meeting with the recruiter or now you're meeting with the hiring manager, in some organizations, you may meet with a panel, meaning you may meet with the hiring manager, but then they want you to come in and maybe meet another lead that you may work closely with, a peer that will also be on your team. When they have those panels, that's because these are the people you're going to collaborate with to do your job. And they want to, and each of them comes with their own perspective, and they want to know that you're going to fit in with the team well. And then each of those individuals, maybe it's a technical person, they have only a tech perspective, but they want to know that you have enough understanding to be able to partner with them. You may have another peer in that panel. That peer just comes with a perspective. Hey, I want to know you know enough to be able to work with me and for us to do our job together. You may have, so you may have different people in a panel style interview, which I don't know if you've sat in many of those yet. But if you ever sit in an interview with multiple people, they're likely from different cross-functional teams or on the team that you would be working with. And they each come kind of with their own perspective, just to kind of understand your experience, get a feel for you, and to know that you would fit in and they could work, do great things with you in a sense. So every interview has the pleasantries where you start off. That's where very commonly the tell me about yourself question comes up. There's always a qualifications assessment part of an interview where once you get through the tell me about yourself and you're building rapport, now they're going to get into tell me how you handled this. Tell me about a time where this came up. Tell me how you handle, challenging situations. That's where your value messages and these stories that you've been working through, because you've practiced them based on their question, you're going to have easy ones that you could pull off your mind and be able to talk through the challenge, the action, and the outcome, the result, and to be able to work through the qualifications piece. And then towards the end of most interviews, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. This asking questions is also a likability thing, but it also shows you're serious about the job because you took the time to come up with some good ones. And it shows interest. Like you really want the job, but you're just generally interested in that role, that company. And that always supports the likability factor, because I've gone to different events this year even and have sat in forums with different recruiters. It surprises me people don't do this more, because I know to go with questions, and I don't even always have the best questions, but I know just to come up with a good question or two, have a couple. And it surprises me that people these days, recruiters keep saying how this is how people stand out more. And then the follow-up, those two things we should already know to do. Ask questions and do a follow-up. It surprises me in this market how few people are doing that. It surprises me, because this is old school. 20 years ago, we knew ask good questions and do a follow-up, right? So it's interesting that things have trended in a different direction. So we know that all 3 of these things are part of every interview, whether it's a short one or a long one. And up to this point, just to do that level set. So we have already begun to build your value message stories. So you're already building that interview inventory to support here. We are already talking about that primary value you bring to the table and your prove it messages and tips. Once we get once we get through this next step, this is simple, not to make it, because they say to practice it, but this can be on your own. This does not have to be high pressure. practice in a mirror just to kind of see how your face, facial expressions and how you're talking about it. I like to actually, Zoom is free. Start like a Zoom session and record just yourself and pretend you're doing the interview and then watch it later and you'll kind of see. I hate watching videos of myself, but that's the perfect way to see if you're talking too fast, if you're umming through the whole thing, which ones to practice on. And these I can do on my own and just not feel judged. I can just kind of do it and practice and fine tune myself without feeling the pressure,
Mm-hmm.
And up to this point, we already started scripting some responses to some common questions. And that's definitely something you want to add in your interview inventory as well.
Sorry, say that last part again.
Remember how we scripted some of those answers to those common questions? You can definitely add that to your interview inventory as well.
Okay.
All right. So for each of these, though, we are going to cover when we talk about your establishing fit, establishing likability. We're going to talk about, make it very simple, the purpose of each of them, why they matter, and then how to cover it in your interview strategy. This should not be rocket science. Why is it going in the wrong direction? Oh, it didn't. Okay. I'm going to stop doing that. Establishing fit. Okay. So when again, we're talking about fit and likability. The purpose for fit is really going to boil down to your aligning with the company values. They want to know that you're going to be a culture fit, that you're going to fit in easily. And when we go to the interview, we're kind of building that case that you have that same values, that you share their values and character that the company adheres to, which is going to build trust and show that you're not a hiring risk. Back to those examples with a bad manager can destroy a team. Someone who comes in and is not a good team player can completely throw off the other team. It can mean, there's not trust within the team members and you cannot collaborate and do great things and deliver great projects if you have one weak link, right? And another reason why it matters, and this is something that I've heard recently and why I wanted to throw it in there. There are just as many employees today that are terminated because they are not a good fit in the culture, in the team. They're kind of that problem child, if you will, always causing a lot of dysfunction, a lot of, making it harder to work, just as much as there are employees today that are terminated because of skill and performance deficiencies. So when we look at, we're in the interview process to get the role, but we want to make sure that we're getting into a culture that you're going to be happy at. If you're someone that, do not thrive in a very fast-paced, high-pressure environment, then you kind of want to know before you go into that's the environment. So because you already know that you're not going to thrive there. And because it's an area you're not going to thrive in, you don't want it to be a short-term role because within a year, either you're going to walk away or they're going to have to walk away. You want it to be a good fit on both sides. And every interview, it is not just about them interviewing you. Yes, you are interviewing them just as much because a good fit, them viewing you as a good fit and you happy that it's a good fit will mean that you're able to do more and you are going to be more successful than just a bad fit just in the name of trying to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about company culture, we both know this, but just to put it out there, there's the culture you can research and find out about a company. And then there's the culture that nobody knows about, that unless you work there, the management styles, whether or not it tends to be a high pressure, stressful work environment, even down to how they do their projects, their methodology, whether or not they're old school waterfall, whether or not they're in an agile environment. Not all industries work in those environments. If you've heard about them, then you're familiar with it. But that's stuff they don't really talk about unless, of course, they're trying to be a pioneer in that methodology, then maybe you'll hear about it. Excuse me. And nowadays, there's actually a lot of websites where employees can do reviews on the companies where you can kind of learn a little bit about the culture. And I will say, though, in every company, there's always going to be some bent and past employee who's just trying to slander the company. So if you find a website that is talking bad about an organization,
right,
A couple people does not mean that's the culture. I mean, they just maybe had a bad experience and they're ticked off about it and they're trying to make the company look bad. So
Yeah.
try to take that with a grain of salt.
Right. Okay.
So we're talking about fit. So how easy ways that you can cover this in your interview strategy, because we want to ensure, like, how can you be sure that A, you're going to be the comfortable fit, that it's going to be a culture you will be able to excel in, and then be able to communicate if you find it's a good culture fit, how to communicate that you're going to be a good culture fit. So the manager even knows that, right? So the strategy is just 4 simple questions. You may actually even want to include some of these as when you get to the asking great questions part. But there are 4 great questions that can help you identify visible and hidden values. Hidden values are the stuff that you're not going to find on the website, little hints. These questions can also help create engaging interviews. And then, of course, show that you have knowledge that cultural alignment is also important to you and you respect it, which means for companies where that's a big deal, that will immediately be a plus for you because you're showing interest in it before they even have to ask. So on these particular slides, these are just 4 questions that you can take into your interviews. And an example is like, and of course, you're going to research every company before you go, right? So you can easily go to the company website and say, hey, do you have questions for us? Yes. Well, I actually read on the website that your company values, and just find one ahead of time. So outside of what I could gather online, are there other values that you personally feel are important to excel in this job? Usually they'll reply with something, and if they reply, for example, I guess, and this is just an example, we value highly resourceful people. That's a hidden value that they've identified. And then you could easily, your next strategy is then to ask them to provide an example of how resourcefulness played a role. And then I kind of include the part 2 of that. So that's great to hear. So since resourcefulness is an important role at your company, can you provide an example where you or someone else showed great resourcefulness and how that led to a key accomplishment? Leaders love talking about, they love asking very open-ended questions that get them to talk. Many of them do, most of them do, because they love engaging conversations. So this is a great way to kind of get them to share more. And even then, the type of accomplishment they share gives you insight to what matters to them, because they're not going to bring up something that wasn't valuable, right? So this is a really good question to get them talking more, because the more you can get them talking, the more insight they're giving you.
Okay.
And another easy question. So when you consider high achievers here, those that are considered highly successful at any level, can you identify 2, 3 traits that most of them share? So that's just giving them the opportunity to reveal, kind of how the company operates. And I liked this because how a company views its employees will say a lot. And I've worked in both type of environments. If they sit there and use terms that high achievers at their company are team players, open to new ideas, eager to share anything in this sphere, then they're a highly collaborative, supportive environment. But that's very different if they mention that companies are successful in their company when they follow policies and procedures and work consistently within established structures. That tells you they're a very structured environment, and however that is, you have to be in line with that environment. This could be a banking, finance may have, or policies and procedures are very important. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to work you like a slave, but knowing you're in a very highly structured environment, obviously, you and I need to know going into that, right? So it can give you insight to how they view their employees and, kind of how the company, the environment that they're operating in. And especially, I think the pharmacy is a very structured environment because policies, procedure, healthcare is obviously it's patient's health. We know that's extremely critical, right? Question 3, if I can improve one thing about the culture here, what would it be? Or if you could. And again, it's just an opportunity to get them talking about hidden values that you're not going to learn about anywhere else. And then this one, if I was hired today and a year from now, we were sitting in my first annual review, how will you know if I was a perfect fit for the company? So this kind of gets them to talk about more traits that are going to be important for them, but also provide kind of specific performance expectations. So you kind of know going into that what they're going to be looking for. And this is just a question that they tend to like themselves. Or
I've never heard that one.
I've seen this come up more frequently. It's a good one too, though, because pretty much you're just saying a year from now, how would you define my success? So it also gives you an idea of what they're going to be looking for. And then it does show a lot of interest because it's just kind of like it says right here. It's showing that you desire to be the perfect fit. And you're asking a really good question to pull that out of them.
Well, and that's them asking me as the interviewee, like, right? Or is that me asking that?
That is you. Yeah, you could pick any of these. I like this one because it's kind of like when they try, sometimes in an interview, they'll ask you, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? We always say with the company, right? But maybe in 3 years, I am looking to build my leadership skills. That's always a good default answer because no matter what role you're in, whether it's entry level, mid-career, senior, you can always build leadership skills. So it shows you're driven, but you could say you're looking to develop leadership skills. You're in 5 years, you definitely would want to be looking for a promotion because we don't want to appear like someone who would just come in and be stagnant. We want to show we're someone who wants to grow with the company. So managers usually eat those type of responses up. But it kind of goes along with something like that.
Okay. Are you going to be sending these questions after this?
Yes, I will send you these slides.
Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. This entire thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I noticed that the interviewing coaching milestones sheet is still up, but there's only 2 pages, so I didn't know if there was, the.
I will be sending you these slides.
Okay. Well, right, and I'm only seeing 1 page that's been stagnant this whole time.
Oh, it has? We're on slide 11. Hold up. Shoot.
Well, that's yeah.
Thank you for letting me know. All right, hold on. So I took it off the screen share. Do you see the agenda screen? Let's test this out.
Yep.
All right, let me stop presenting and share it again. Okay, we'll rehash a couple of those real quick and make sure that you saw them. All right, can you see the agenda screen? Let's make sure we're back on the same page. All right, I'm just going to keep it here. So we were here. You saw this one? I don't remember where it left off.
Yep, saw
Here?
that.
All right. Establishing fit. Okay. 4 questions. So this is where we're talking about how to now take how to establish fit strategically in your interview. So here's your strategy. So 4 questions. Here's question 1, the one I read on your website, and this is simply going to their website, finding some values. So you saw this one?
I'm seeing it now.
Okay, perfect. And then this is just including the example. Whatever they reply back with, plug it in. So they say, yes, we value highly resourceful people, or yes, we value collaborative. We value people who can drive initiatives, whatever they come back with. We value people who are curious. And then you could easily plug that in. Can you provide an example of someone who showed great curiosity that led to a key accomplishment? Most likely that's going to stump them. They're going to have to think about that one for a second. But
sorry, the sense resourcefulness is an important value can you provide an example where you or someone else showed great resourcefulness that led to a key accomplishment? Okay.
Yep. And I just plugged in another one. Like, let's say they come back with curiosity is highly valued. You could easily plug that in. And frankly, in my experience, any question that you can stump the hiring manager is always a good one, because then that means they don't get that question often and you're unique. So I always like stumping them. If they have to think about it.
I usually ask like what they like most about the job, or what do they see the biggest challenges for the role, or where the company
That's
is
a good one.
growing.
But then keep in mind, 10 other people have asked the same question, and we also want to stand out. So
Mhm,
I do like coming up with unique questions because then we're not like everybody else. And in this market,
mhm,
we need to stand out among everybody else.
mhm, mhm,
And you can even go into ChatGPT, unique questions to ask an interviewer, and get some examples
mhm,
and use them for your purpose. So here was the
mhm,
second one. When you consider high achievers at your company, those
mhm.
are viewed highly successful at any level. Can you identify 2, 3 traits that most of them share? And again, this says a lot about how the company views its employees, but it can also reveal how they operate. And this is where I gave the example. If they describe high achievers at their company as team players, open to ideas, eager to share ideas, that tells me it's a highly collaborative environment, that they're open to innovation. But if they reply, it's a high achievers here follow policies, procedures. They work consistently with an established. Oh my goodness. Sorry, 1 second. I thought I had her away. All right, Nick, I'm back.
Okay, I'm back too.
All right, sorry about that. Thought I had
No
her
problem.
locked up. She must have gotten out. The defenses, darn dogs. Do you have any pets at home?
I do not know.
Okay. Yeah, the cats are easier, but one of my dogs is a husky, so he's a howler, and then the other one now is a barker, so makes it interesting. Okay, so back to here. That was question 2. Question 3 that we were looking at is, if you can improve one thing about the culture here, what would it be? Because again, with establishing fit, we're talking what the company values. We're talking about their culture. And then question 4, this is the one where you mentioned was an interesting one. If I was hired today, and how will you know a year from now at my first annual review that I was a perfect fit?
Hmm.
And since again, if this is not as common, this is going to be one where that they probably don't get often, and they're going to have to stop and think about that. And I always think, again, if you can get them stumped and have them think about a response, that's always a good thing. All right. Any questions just from a fit perspective and why establishing fit is so important? The purpose it has going into that interview.
Well, I mean, somewhat, yeah. Would you ask that specifically? Like,
I mean, yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, here's
like that
another way
seems
to
a
look
little
at it.
blunt to, ask is like, oh, after they've probably already made a determination whether you are a good fit,
No.
before they ask you oh, no?
If you've gotten the interview, you are already qualified.
No, 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 right. I'm
Right.
saying
So
that,
you're now the job is to stand out among the other 5 to 10 people that are also being interviewed. Now you just want to stand out. And the way to do that is establishing that fit, show them that you would fit in right away, day one, that you align with their culture, what they value, that you are, like a good, like you're an add-on to their culture, if that makes sense.
mhm. No, no,
So
right. Would
yeah,
you actually ask that, like, when they say, because establishing fits earlier in the interview, and
Yeah.
at the end, it's like, oh, do you have any questions for us? Would it be wise to say, do you think I'm a good fit for this company, or just
I
like,
would
no?
I
Okay.
wouldn't. I would come up with better questions than that. And actually, you could even work it in as they're asking questions during the qualifications part where they're asking you about different, tell me an example when you did this. You could easily work in, yes, I had this challenge where we had to work out this compliance issue, and the actions that I took were I brought together cross-functional teams. I built out a timeline and really tracked these dates and ensured that my partners had what they need. We ensured delivery, and I'm making stuff up, but working in those stories, I would definitely be showing that I'm collaborative, that I'm open to learning. I would be working that I'm resourceful. If I did my research and learned what matters for this company, I even went to their company web or company page in LinkedIn, looked at what they talk about as a company. I would be working some of that in as I go through these stories. So you are already starting to show a culture fit. I wouldn't wait till the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is asking about particular values that may be something you couldn't find when you did your research. So that's unless they mention it. And even if they mention something that, oh, well, we value, yes, we've had, one of the questions could be, and I'm again making something up, do you have a lot of extensive experience with this type of tool? Yeah, we've had someone here before and they really struggled with it. That's an opportunity to mention that you're adaptive. Yeah, I've experienced that tool. Um, I learned it really quickly when I worked at this organization, and I do enjoy working with new tools and adapting them into our process or whatever. And I enjoy, and I've also had opportunities to coach other team members on how to use them as well. Stuff like that, which again is showing culture fit in a culture where they're highly collaborative. Maybe they bring on a lot of new technology or new tools, and they need people that are resilient.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so establishing our likability, this is really just building that rapport. So at the beginning of the interview, we're looking to already kick off and establish a positive and engaging tone. We already know, look them in the eyes, shake their hand. If it's virtual, which the majority of these time are, tips like always making sure you're looking at your camera. So if you have two screens, don't look at the camera over there, like how I'm doing right now. That's no connection, right? I'm not looking at you. Even though I see them on this screen, I'm always going to look where the camera is. But we want to make sure we're just establishing that connection, building rapport. And, for the interviewee, we help create the environment. It's not just the interviewer that creates an environment to make it more conversational rather than for us feeling like an interrogation. But we can help create that environment by making it very casual conversation. We know we're there to talk business, but that doesn't mean it has to sound like it. And sometimes interviewers can be nervous like we are. Maybe there's someone who hasn't interviewed a lot of people. They're newer, they're younger. So it also, if you help create that conversational tone, it can help ease them a little bit. Or they maybe have had a heck of a morning, come from some high stress meetings. So they're coming in a little, a little stressed, and your conversational tone can kind of help ease them into that as well. And the why likability matters is, the reality is that most of the time, job seekers, we are spending time preparing for interviews by just practicing responses to questions, trying to memorize and remember the key points we want to remember to mention because we want to make a good impression. So yes, we need to do that. We need to understand the value we bring, and we need to be comfortable talking about it. But the reality is, when you're in an interview, establishing likability is your number one job because that's what makes you memorable. Remember, you're already qualified. You're there. How are you going to be remembered and be at the top pick among the other 5 3, 10, however many other people that you don't know they're interviewing with. We will never know how many other people they're talking with. So you want to just establish that likability, that rapport. That way, when they're thinking of who did well, who do we think is a good fit, we want you to be one of the top people that come to mind, because then you'll make it to the next round. So just a few tips on what establishing likability is not. It is not memorizing responses to anticipated questions, and it is not relying on personality alone. A lot of people wing it when it comes to this likability. They don't realize how important it is. Maybe a few years ago, when the market was shifted and it was an employee-driven market and they did not have enough people to fill roles and people were getting competing offers. Maybe we didn't have to go through so much effort to ensure we establish rapport, but now it's flipped. There are not enough jobs for the amount of qualified people out there, high competition. So personality alone is not going to win it over. You need a strategy to establish that rapport. So, and actually, I just pretty much covered the next items. So just remember this going into your interview, build rapport. Building rapport is also going to be a part about what we're going to talk about next. It's about identifying their communicating style and kind of mirroring it. When we go and hang out with new people, if they are our vibe, we're more comfortable, right? Like if you're a high energy person, you go hang out with people that are high energy, you feel like you're right at home. Like they're, just as crazy as you are. If you're more of like the calm, laid back type, you're more comfortable hanging out with people that are calm and laid back. It's similar idea. So we're going to talk about that next. And then, of course, asking those good questions.
Mhm.
All right. And this is just another thing that was drilled in going through some of the interview coach classes that I took. Very important. And another reason why likability is job number 1. There are job seekers who are hired today. You know how they say if you're like 80% qualified, apply for the job. That's because if you're not 100% qualified, but you are really strong with the likability factor, there are job seekers today that are hired, even though they're not the best qualified skill-wise. There are some that are hired, even though they're not the most ideal fit. Maybe they're close, but not the perfect fit. You will never see a job seeker hired who is disliked. So that is why when you are interviewing with the other 5 to 10 people, if you are not standing out from a likability standpoint, but other people are stronger in that and just leave more of an impression, they're going to be the ones that are thought of first. And maybe it doesn't mean you were disliked. It just means you weren't liked as much as them, All right. But talking through that, how do we, in practical terms, do we approach this in an interview? So that's where this was on the previous. So during your interview, building rapport and establishing that likability involves identifying your interviewer's communication style, mirroring it, and then having 2-3 great questions prepared in advance. One on culture fit, maybe something you saw about the company, asking, where the company is going but not that generic question, maybe coming up with a better one, but having those 2 to 3 great questions in advance. And when we talk about the interviewer's communication style, there are basic communication styles I think that there are people who can fit into multiple communication styles, but generally, you have the auditory communicators, which they're not big on visuals. They connect with people more through conversation. So somebody who goes into an interview with all of these charts and wants to just rely on visuals without explaining the details, that's a lot for them to take in. And they gather more from your story and from your value by hearing the stories and the details you include, by direct eye contact and just visually explaining things to them. You have the visual communicators. I see myself as a visual communicator. So they may use phrases like, I imagine, I can see it now, or I tend to view things this way. They're visual. Visual communicators probably tend to be more higher energy, outward emotion. So I do think I fit into this category because I don't know if you notice, I talk with my hands a lot. I can say that that's a Hispanic thing, but it's also a me thing. I don't know if I'm considered high energy, but visual communicators can visualize and dream more easily, and they do tend to speak a little more rapidly. When you are working with more those auditory types, that's where explaining things verbally, storytelling come into play. And if you're dealing with something who's very visual, the strategy and tip here is just we always want to go into an interview making sure that our look and appearance is clean. But if you think about it from a strategy perspective, that's going to mean more for a visual communicator because they read more off of visual cues, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing this wrong, but kinesthetic communicators are tend to be more sensory related, more emotions, feeling, um, responding to pressure, intensity. They're more sensitive to those things. So this is an interviewer that may be, sitting back in his chair. They'll tend to be more relaxed, speak a little slower, move a little slower. And they often learn best. They're more hands-on people, may learn best by doing. There's actually a lot of people who tend to fit into this category. And when, strategically, stories and the action or the results of actions and how, when you responded to something that was challenging and how you responded to resilience and what that meant for the organization. Working in those type of stories, like they need to have a feel for what working with you would feel like. So working some of this into your stories and some of the soft skills, working it into it is great for these folks. And when you're mirroring, then we'll get into that next, but you can see, I kind of included for visual, they tend to be more high energy. For this type, they tend to be more slow speaking. So when we talk about mirroring, this is where you can easily make, when you hang out with people that are like you just tend to notice it and you feel more comfortable. When we're building likability and you can observe and catch on, when we attend an interview and very quickly in a meeting, if you're dealing with an A type personality, they tend to be more louder, more strong spoken. They tend to talk more rapidly. Their hands may be on the desk. Their body postures is more sitting up straight, more leaning in, matching that based on the interviewer builds that likability. You tend to feel like they sense you're kind of part of their crew or part of their personality, part of their type of people. So that builds likability already up front, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I did jump ahead a little bit, but when we're talking about how to do this, there are two basic ways that when you get into an interview that you just want to, your purpose is to communicate your value and to listen to what they have to say. But we just want to have our eyes and ears. We're listening and observing and kind of identifying their communicating style. So you have a chance to connect with them in a way that speaks to them. And actually, I meant to put this on the other page, so we're just going to skip that for now, because actually I did put a lot of that here. But because it's more visual and observing, yeah, that's what I put. I think that this is an area where maybe some people struggle. So let me stop and ask, like, where do you feel like you're at when you get into an interview? Do you tend to observe personality traits, how they talk, if they tend to be more fast spoken? Is that stuff that tends to jump out at you?
Perhaps.
Okay. So this may be tricky and take a little bit of practice. So really, when you're getting there, you want to build rapport. And I don't know if this is something that you want to just have printed out and have with you. So when you're joining the interview, or even have like if it was me, I probably would have, because I like cheat sheets, like interview first step. And, I'm already going to be prepared with the stories, but I want to tell. Communication style, observe. And as I'm getting to, hey, tell me about yourself, and going through some of that, I'm probably going to be trying to observe their tone, their energy level. Are they more the relaxed type and I'm just going to be relaxed with them? Or are they the more high energy and I want to sit up and lean in a little more and match them? Definitely even do this when you're on a virtual interview. So even through a Zoom call, it is very easy to do this. You may not be able to see if my hands are on the desk, but you can see if I talk with my hands more. You can see if I'm kind of leaning in versus sitting back and slouched. So that you can still probably make some observations off if you're doing a web interview. But, if so, matching their tone, matching their energy and body language. We always want to make eye contact, but if there's someone, I do tend to kind of look around when I talk as I'm thinking through something. If they're doing that, then feel comfortable to do that too.
Okay.
And this does get easier if as you practice it. It's kind of like a muscle that for some people it comes a little more quickly, and others they have to just make it a little more intentional. All right, and then I have a complicated sheet on how you could research companies and make it to come up with really good, you will stand out by asking good questions, because you're going to research research the company to a level that not other people do. I have heard of people if they come up with really good questions, that makes them stand out above all others. But I don't want to throw more new things on you right now. So let me know if you get to a point where you're interested in that. For now, I just wanted to put some really good questions to give you something to get started with. So let me know if at any point, because from here, your next interviews, I would even print this guy out and have it at your desk as something easy. That's what I was going to suggest. But practice this and let me know where you're struggling with it. And if next week you want to practice some of it, this one, when we have some mock interview time.
Okay.
But some good questions that you can ask. What specific skills and qualities did the last person who held this position have that you would like to see continued and improved? I think this may be a common one, but what few things in particular do you believe would make an ideal candidate? So there's different variations. You mentioned this one in your own experience. What have you enjoyed working here the most? This is actually a repeat. I wanted to make sure this was in this in case you print this list out. And I like this one, given the speed of change, because in finance, tech is at the foundation of how banks work. They rely on payment ecosystems for money to transfer. In pharmacy tech, systems, how you guys do everything. So this is a really good one I like. And given the speed of change, and it also gives the impression that you pay attention to these things. So in the speed of change in an ever-changing global and technology-driven market, where do you see this company or industry in 3 to 5 years? So if they're kind of a hiring manager and they're not at the strategic level, maybe they don't have insight. Maybe all they know is where they see the change coming in their department. Or you're talking, if you ever talk with a manager's manager, meaning like you talk with the hiring manager, but they want you to meet with their director, oftentimes they will. That person just wants to know that you're going to help the department succeed. Senior level managers will eat this question up, because if you think about it, every interviewer is going to have their own perspective when they meet with you. Again, managers, they're responsible for the strategic level of the company. And that is, they think strategic.
Okay. And I've heard that before. I did have a question. Let's say, What few things in particular do you believe would make an ideal candidate? I have asked a variation of that before, and I think the manager just reiterated what the ideal or the preferred qualities and experience that they're looking for in the role. They kind of just threw it back and like, all right, it's just they kind
Yeah.
of
So in other words, we already put it in the job description. And I would counter that with, okay, then and I would actually go at them back. Then what skills or qualities did the person who held this position before lack? Or what skills or qualities do you observe that tend to be, that tend to be,
counterintuitive.
right? Where do you see that team members struggle the most?
Okay. Or challenges that they foresee in the role.
Yeah.
Although I guess this wouldn't really, well, that last question would work if there was a new role too. Like just what do you foresee being a challenge for this person to take on this new role?
And let me see what this comes back with. A hiring manager in an interview or pharmacy technician roles that show my interest and make me memorable. It's always interesting to see what this stuff comes back with. And you can be very specific. If this shows something good, I'll put this I'll copy and paste this for you. So what do your top performing pharmacy technicians do to set them apart? How does your team handle high pressure or high volume days? And what role would I play in that? How would you define success in the first 90 days? This is a really good question.
Yeah, I've asked that too.
Yeah. What type of response do you get?
Someone that's able to, learn quickly, be punctual, ask the right questions, mingle well with the team and other departments, etc.
Yeah.
And then,
Okay.
just, and I mean, let's say, I think one of them was like, well, it's kind of, up to the employee after that point, whether they want to continue on the success track or the road.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I highlighted one that for you is really good question. So have there been any recent changes in state and federal pharmacy regulations that have impacted your workflow? Because of your background, they could give whatever response and you could work in, yeah, I have worked in, with some of the work I've done with regulatory and compliance, you could work in, I definitely have experience staying on top of these and ensuring that our department that our projects are in compliance. Work something like that in and you're reminding them of your value add and that you're a go-getter in this area. So here, I will include this when I send this over. AI prompts. I'll see if there's another prompt that I could even include with this because AI prompts are a dime a dozen, but not everyone knows how to write very detailed AI prompts that can actually get really good feedback like this one just did. So here.
Mhm.
And obviously, if you use this in the future, whether it's substitute pharmacy technician for the role you're applying to.
Mm-hmm.
And another one that would be good too is show me top 10 unique questions I can ask a hiring manager when I enter you for this job posting in the blank industry. Wait for me to post the job description before continuing. Then post JD. So that's another one you could use. I've used this on occasion.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard of some tricks of the trade with using AI. But again, even with what it spit back, you know, there's some of the questions that you know to ask, these unique ones, especially if it's regulatory or something that you know really matters to that hiring manager, because you know they could you mess up in this area and that's either your job or heavy fines, right? So something big like that.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is Friday, so
Mhm.
I'll get this over to you, and I will get the job or the recording to you tomorrow.
Okay. I did notice because I haven't been able to download or save the recordings yet. I know it's the last one. It didn't give me an option to be able to.
No, they haven't. I don't know if I just assumed that that we'd have the ability to do that, but I may not have the ability to actually or to make them downloadable.
Hmm.
So I tried to pursue that at first, but I'm not. I think I may have to reach out to the company and see if there's a way that they can make it accessible. Because
Okay.
that was my intent with doing the recording. So you have them available.
Mhm.
The ones that matter to you, you can download them for yourself and have them for future use.
Well, right, and that's what but I mean, I didn't know. Do you know how long they stay? Or I guess they don't go away, right?
They don't. Not right now. No.
Okay.
What I'll do is that if I ever find out, and I've got plenty of storage space in my drive, so I will have to at one point get a hold of them and figure out. Like I don't know if it's going to be like some additional cost, but I have to see if that's even an option.
Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah, but they'll be accessible for now. So you'll definitely have
Mhm.
them available. And
Okay.
at some point in the future, if I want to start recording some of these and having just general videos that are available for anybody. So
Mhm.
at some point, I want to start replacing this with more formal ones
Mhm.
that then you'd have access to because they'll be the ones I share with anybody.
Right. Okay.
So once I get to that point, I just haven't started building those out yet.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess going back to that analyst role with Mohegan Sun, I mean, and is it worth saying, I am, very interested. I think I'd make a great fit. This is something I'm really like. I've heard you want to express interest, but you don't want to be too overly eager. Like you don't want to come off as desperate or whatever.
I mean, I think that they've already kind of stated where they think it's going in a polite way. So
Is that really? That's
it's based on their response. I mean, pretty much you've already applied and you're asking about next steps, and they're saying, well, we just haven't found the right fit. And if you've already applied to that, you could definitely,
it was my
follow up, but it just kind of seems like I would go back. If it was me, I would want to go back and look at the job description versus my resume and say if there's anything I could have done to make it more of a stronger fit
mhm.
for, you know,
Okay. All right.
as everyone we're going through, we're getting a little better. We're learning how to tailor it and get a little stronger, fine tune our approach. So
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I gotta go because I got my interview in a little bit, but thank
no
you.
worries. No
Take
worries.
care.
Good luck. All right. Bye.
Bye.